Hi, and welcome to another Retinol video. So a few days ago, I think it was last Saturday, the 3rd of February 2024, I headed down to my first larger scale Amiga meet. It's called SWAG, which stands for the Southwest Amiga Group, and it's actually located in a town near Bristol in the southwest of the UK called Chipping Sodbury. Yeah, wonderful English name there. And one of the channel's viewers, Vinny, I was chatting to him and he suggested that I might want to attend it. And he mentioned a few other meets as well. And it just so happened that the meeting was coming up in a few days' time. So actually it was a little bit of a spur of the moment thing. It's a little bit of a drive from here down to Chipping Sodbury. I think it was an hour and a half, something like that, to get there. But to be fair, that's the kind of drive I quite like. It's quite short and then you're there, you're basically doing things. So yeah, I decided to commit, bought the ticket and headed down to Chipping Sodbury. The weather wasn't great on the day. It was a little bit overcast. Well, it was very overcast. It was a typical sort of British winter day. Lots of white cloud. Wasn't particularly cold, to be honest. When I arrived at the venue, it had just been raining. And I had this horrible feeling because I just wanted to have a quick chat with you before I went in. And I thought it was going to be raining outside. But luckily, when I got there, the weather had picked up a bit and it was at least wasn't raining. So let's carry on and see what I found at this meeting. Just arrived at the event in Chipping Sodbury. This is the Southwest Amiga's user group meeting. So I'm about to go inside and see what it's like. Hopefully a few people have turned up, but we'll have to go and see. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Let's go and have a look. So I'm walking into the event. I was a little bit surprised. I thought it was maybe a little bit smaller than I was expecting. But I guess that's because I've seen events in America where, you know, they have 6 times the amount of population we have over here. So I was kind of expecting 500, but of course, this event was for 80. But still, it's a lot of people and there's quite a lot to see. So I walked around the show and I noticed this area where you were meant to get your badge. And I had a look here and I actually picked up my own badge. Then I started looking at the items to see what was for sale. And I did want something, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted. And I spotted this MT32 Pi, and I was quite interested in that, but I didn't really have anything to hook it up with. So then I spotted this case, which I thought was interesting. It's for an Amiga 1200, and it allows you to actually put it into a PC-like form factor. This was selling for £250, so you can see I'm taking a little bit of interest here. But this is not something I think I would personally be wanting to do, as I'm more into sort of original machines and their form factors. So I moved on and I could see this Grand Prix, which was a favorite game of mine back in the day. And then I spotted this, a Zap 64 Amiga annual. So I thought I'd get this. That would be quite interesting to read. Over here, I found Amiga OS, which I then purchased. Amiga OS 3.2, and next to it were a series of accelerator boards. I believe these are Terrible Fires, not quite sure, but I think they are. And again, another accelerator board. Right next to this area was the repair zone, and I had a chat with both of the guys here who are actually working on machines. This guy's working on Amiga 1200, and I believe he was recapping it. I think somebody had brought it in for it to be serviced. So it's quite interesting to compare notes and, you know, talk about machines that I'd actually worked on myself in the past. I did notice that he had a large ventilation device, and that's definitely something I need to get hold of. I've put together a blue SCSI recently, and yeah, there was a lot of flux smoke coming off that, so that's definitely something to add to the equipment list for the future. Not so sure about the black murder gloves though. So I moved on, and I could see here that there was an Amiga 2000 that was being worked on. This was a machine which I actually own myself, and I've spent a lot of time repairing, eventually winning the battle and actually getting it working again. So it was interesting to have a chat with this young man, and we discussed the typical problems you get with an Amiga 2000 when it has battery damage. The traces very close to the battery tend to get very damaged, and inevitably you have to put in some bodge wires to fix those areas. So yeah, it's really good to see another Amiga 2000 that will eventually hopefully make it back into somebody's hands and will be used and loved again. So I'd originally been invited to the show by one of the viewers, Vinny, and he lives relatively close to me, and he said it might be an idea to pop along to Swag. So I decided to go, and I met him at the show, and I was quite bedazzled by his machine. So this is actually an Evo 64, which is a completely new Commodore 64 board, and it's inside a custom cut case, as you can see here. It looks really amazing. And it's basically absolutely tripped out. It's got everything in it, really. It has a sound amplifier with dual 65 SIDs. It has a Kawari, which allows it to output HDMI. And it also has a WIC 64 cartridge, you can see coming out on the back on the left there. And also it has a Sidekick 64. So basically everything that you could throw at a Commodore 64, this machine actually has. It's amazing. I would definitely like to borrow it from him and possibly not give it back. No, I'm joking. Obviously, he would give it back. So then I carried on walking around the show. You can see there are lots and lots of Amigas. A 1200 here. 1200 seemed to be very popular, as you can see. And also I saw quite a few CD32s as well. So I just wandered around, waiting to see if I could see anything particularly interesting going on. Somebody here's got a Space Invader machine, little arcade machine, and it's nice to see an original monitor as well. I did spot this BBC, I think it's a B, and I actually purchased one of these recently. Haven't actually got round to using it yet because it probably needs to be recapped. But it was actually quite interesting to see inside it. And they were offering a free disc salvage service as well. I thought that was quite interesting. Walking around the show, I spotted a Sharp 68000, and I spoke to the owner, and sadly, it didn't seem to have survived the trip to the show. At least he was having problems getting it working. It's such an interesting machine. Interesting industrial design as well, all in black. And the twin tower design as well, which I think is very interesting. So definitely a machine I'd like to find out more about in the future. And I found it very interesting that, this was an Amiga show, but there were actually quite a lot of different machines around the floor. Because obviously I'm more familiar with Amiga, I generally actually made an effort to go out and speak to those people to find out about, these interesting machines. David Pleasance arrived, and I had a chat with him about buying one of his hoodies, but I decided not to because I get pretty warm anyway, and I'm probably more in the market for a t-shirt. Then I saw a BBC Master System, and this was actually owned by the same guy that owned the Sharp 68000. And we had a chat about this machine, and it turns out that it was used for an industrial purpose in the past. We couldn't quite work out what that was. It's got this amazingly large hard drive, 20 megabytes. Then you've got the main machine, which is, the most expensive beeb, and right next to it you've got a box there, which actually has an extra CPU in it. So this would have been quite a powerhouse back in the day, a very expensive piece of kit. And apparently it was used for an industrial purpose. Measuring something, some kind of CNC machine, something like that. Nobody could quite work out what that was. But he hopes to get this worked out, and he's going to do a bit of tech archaeology and trying to work out what this machine was actually once used for. Then I had a chat with an Atari owner, and he had this machine, which is an FPGA Atari emulator. It's called an Eclaire. Right next to it was a MiSTer. This machine seems to have been built to actually emulate the form factor of the Atari machines. So I didn't really get to have that much of a look at it, but I did see that it was actually playing Ball Blazer on the monitor next to him, which was a bit of a landmark game back in the day. And he informed me it was the first game with anti-aliasing, which was really interesting. So then I noticed this banner, and it's Amiga-compatible hardware, the Retro Bay, some kind of device on an Amiga. It looks like it's called a GoDrive. Digital Retro Bay, what is this? So there's a little scan me there. You can actually scan that if you want to with your phones now, if you want to find out about this device. But I couldn't quite work out what it was, to be honest. Then I looked behind me, and there were these Amigas, a couple of Amiga 1200, a 600, and a 500, all in very striking modern cases. And they all had these devices on it, so I was guessing by now that it was some kind of Gotek-like device. And then the owner turned up. So this is an interesting solution I saw at the show. It's called the GoDrive E1200. And it's really interesting because what it allows you to do is to have a Gotek drive, pretty much the same thing, but you don't have to actually damage your floppy drive, which is something I've noticed on a lot of machines I'm not being very happy about. So this is really cool because it allows you to preserve the floppy drive, the original floppy drive, and also have a Gotek-like experience at the same time. So I think that's really interesting. Is this your own design, or?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
All
I've already filmed your
yes,
banner up there.
all what you can see here, all my own designs, all from the brackets to PCB, all the idea.
So, yeah, I think it's really cool what you've done.
Yeah, thank you.
It's really interesting. Yeah,
it's a really big market for it, apparently.
Yeah, I think so.
This device, I would say, it does fill the gap for the person, a purist, which they don't want to sacrifice their flop and drive.
I'm one of those people. I don't like it when you lose it. Yeah,
I would say they still want to use a new feature like the Gold tag.
Yeah,
that's why my device actually perfectly fill the gap.
I like to keep the real discs, but when you're trying to do a lot of stuff, it's not necessarily practical.
No.
I own a lot of Infocom games, for instance. Yeah. Some of them have the real discs.
Yeah.
Most of them don't work anymore.
Yeah.
They just deteriorate so much.
Yeah. It does exactly the same with the Amiga, but there's quite a few discs. Yeah. And that simple solution even lets you to preserve all your own discs.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty nice and neat, non-destructible drop-in solution.
Yeah.
You know, that easy to fit, and it just works.
Yeah. Best of both worlds. Yeah. Thank you for showing me it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Then I spotted a pretty extreme pair of machines and read up about these, and actually these are Amiga 1000s, would you believe? These are, the actual innards are a completely modern Amiga 1000 solution. If you look in there, you've got the power supply on the left. And if you're familiar with the Amiga 1000, you'll actually recognize it as one, but it's so radically different that it is actually quite difficult to recognize it. So just taking a quick look here, and it's the Georg Braun Amiga 1000. And it's in a custom-made case. And next to it, I spotted a completely new Amiga 4000 case, so I thought that was interesting. You know, for anybody out there who's found a machine with a working board and a completely destroyed case, that's quite interesting. And yay, it lives. The Sharp 68000 actually does work. And it turned out in the end that the problem was actually something pretty simple. The monitor had actually developed a fault. So I think the owner actually managed to get another monitor, and here he is playing Bubble Bobble, one of many games, I'm sure, for the Sharp 68000. Really interesting machine, that. So I walked around the show a little bit more. There's a PET there, obviously. There's an Atari 800XL. I actually have one of those. Yeah, I'm just generally looking around just to see what's going on. And you can see people having, you know, different chats. And then I actually met up with Chris. Chris was one of the people that I met at the Greenford Computing Club in northwest London. He's explaining to me here what he's actually doing, and it's another Amiga 1200. He's got it in this custom case here, and he's planning to transplant it into an actual, more sort of conventional but new Amiga 1200 case. So yeah, it was really interesting to see that another Londoner had made his way all the way down to Bristol, or near Bristol anyway, Chipping Sodbury. And as the show came to an end, I had a quick chat with this guy about his modem, which is actually a modern solution using Wi-Fi. And we reminisced about how difficult it was to use a modem back in the day, especially getting to a telephone cable. Yeah, so that was quite funny, having a chat about that. So yeah, what an action-packed day. I must admit, when I condensed that video down, it was amazing how many things I actually did on that day. I was a little bit surprised in some ways that the event wasn't bigger. I've become used to seeing American events, and obviously America's a much larger country, bigger population. And I also think people in America are more willing to drive very long distances. I've seen people drive thousands of miles to go to these events and fly on aeroplanes and things like that. And I don't think British people are so used to doing that. Despite that, there was a really good turnout. I think it was about 80 people. And during the day, there was a kind of constant turnover, actually, of new people turning up. Some people were leaving, you know. I think I arrived there about, I think it was about 10:30, something like that, basically 11 o'clock. And I left there around 5:30. So I was there for quite a decent amount of time. And I was really interested to see the things on sale on the table. Just as you walked in, it was on the right-hand side. What I was really looking for myself was actually a 68030 card, either a recreation or an original one for an Amiga 2000, because I have a Raspberry Pi in that machine, and I would actually like to have something a little bit more period correct, 68030. I don't mind it being like a really fast one, you know, like a 50 megahertz, but basically I don't really want to have a Raspberry Pi emulating most of the machine. I'd rather have it be a little bit more original. Unfortunately, nobody was selling one of those, so at the end of the day, I just came away with an Amiga manual, a Zap Amiga manual, and that was it, £2.50. But yeah, I really enjoyed the day. The food was good. The people were really friendly. I had to go around and obviously talk to a lot of people, break the ice between us. I'd never been to a meet like this before, so I didn't really know anybody. And I'm not the most gregarious of people, so that was a little bit difficult, you know, having to basically go up and just start talking to people about, you know, what they had. But everybody was there really to talk and chat, so at the end of the day, it wasn't difficult. There is another show coming up like this very soon, much closer to myself, which is in Ottershaw, which I'm going to attend. And I'm not sure if I'm going to video that one. I'll have to see how I feel on the day. I may video it because sometimes, you know, you see some interesting things and it's quite nice to share that with you. So yeah, I'll have to see how that goes. I certainly learned a lot doing this video. The technique was, I didn't have a clue really how to do it. So I think I definitely learned some lessons. I'm not sure if I'm going to necessarily act on them for the next video. For instance, I'd like to get a reporter's microphone. And the reason for that is I had this microphone at the show, and I also have the microphone which is built into the camera. And the camera tends to pick up a lot of ambient sound. I mean, a lot. It doesn't pick up voices at all because it's pointing away from you. And this tends to pick up my voice. But if you're in a room with a lot of people excitedly talking about things and you want to talk to somebody, this microphone doesn't necessarily pick them up very well. So I might invest in a little sort of reporter's microphone, which might look a little bit bizarre. But it's why reporters use them, because sometimes you want the other person to speak and you want to hear what they're saying. So yeah, I might do that. I'll also try and be a little bit more professional when I film next time. But yeah, it was good fun. Definitely a learning experience. One I'll repeat in the future. If you went to the show, please get in touch with me. I'd like to hear what you think about the video. If I spoke to you at the show, please reach out to me. There was one guy there in particular, I think I was looking at his Atari machine. It was an emulator. Oh, I shouldn't say emulator. People get angry about that with FPGAs. I don't even know what you call it. Anyway, it was an FPGA-based Atari 800, I think it was. And I found that really interesting. And we were chatting about games for the Atari 800 and which ones were the best ones. And I'd like to reach out to him and actually find out what he thought. Because he seemed to be a little bit of a sort of Atari aficionado, I suppose. But yeah, anybody who was at the show wants to reach out to me, please do, you know, put your thoughts in the comments below, and I'm definitely happy to talk to you about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click on the like button. And obviously, if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel because we'd like to see you back here again to see future videos. I'm going to be in Ottershaw, when is it? 2 weeks from now? Well, a week and a half. So if you watch this video and you're going to be there, I'll see you there. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Take care for now.